Welcome to Straight Talk Sacred Pathway. I'm Stuart Welbourn, a British author and former therapist, and each week I sit down with Wa-Na-Nee-Che, a spiritual elder from Turtle Island, to explore the deeper truths behind healing, ceremony, and connection to Source. With all the crazy stuff going on in the world right now, I thought, if you feel like it, you must have helped hundreds of people over the years, probably thousands of people, working one-to-one, have you?
Pardon?
Over the years, since you've been out and about doing festivals and doing what you do, you must have worked one-to-one and helped people, thousands of people. Yeah?
Oh yeah. I
Well, I've done
figured
hundreds, and
maybe.
I'm not as old as you.
Uh, well, I started back in, I believe, 1980. I'll say 1990. That's when I started basically going overseas. So when you look at it, I've been going over there almost 25, 35 years, and I've probably been in contact with probably a little over maybe 10,000 people. And it's kind of funny because as long as you're up there and you're talking, you get 100% response. It's just like watching TV, and all of a sudden the TV goes off, so you don't do anything. It's like once you get motivated while I'm speaking, but once I leave, they go back to the same old routines.
It's part of human behaviour, though, isn't it? Unless you repeat something often enough, you tend to fall back into your old patterns.
Yeah. The good thing, yeah, the good thing about it though, there has been some response by a lot of good people. So I'm really appreciated that number one, that they took what I was saying very serious and it changed their lives. I had one guy basically who called me and said that he was thinking about committing suicide and he almost convinced himself that he was going to do it until he read one of my books and he said it changed his life. Because that's the kind of stories I like to hear too about people that when I say things or do things, that it changes their lives. And they finally focus on what they should be doing and what they should not be doing.
Mm. Well, funny enough, this was what I was kind of leading to, was since, the news is dominated with your idiot president, like, doing crazy things, I just wondered if you fancied sharing some of your favourite stories from over the years of the people you've helped.
Yeah.
Because you must have loads of stories, and that saves me asking questions, unless somebody comes through with a question. Because we've pretty much covered a lot of stuff that's, your basic, what you do, your message, and we don't want to keep repeating. I thought it'd be nice to get some actual stories from your time, if you've got 36 years.
It would kind of laugh sometimes too, because if I didn't pay that much attention to someone, they got upset. Even though I answered their questions, they wanted my full attention and they didn't want anybody else to get my attention. And when I wouldn't play the game, they would criticize me.
Free the mind. All it takes.
What's that, Matthew?
I said free the mind. That's all it takes.
Hang on one second. I won't be able to hear you for a second. I know someone's messaging to say that they can't hear us or something.
Oh, I was just far away. I was saying free the mind. That's all it takes.
There's a way to get you. And last week we were talking about the vision I had,
Okay.
and we were sitting, and in the vision, the energies came, and they started discussing the difference between the life force energy and the brain, and how the brain is battling with the life force energies, and that the brain is winning. And they said one of the things that people have to understand is that they've allowed the mind itself to become very, very powerful. one of the things that when I devised the CD was so that the CD will eventually break through and it will put the mind to sleep, which allows you to go into your subconscious where the control is. And what they do is they'll pull something out of your subconscious that controls you, not everything at one time, but one piece at a time. So when you finally break through and you actually go into the complete vision of the CD, that's when it starts working on getting you out of the control the mind has. And I remember that I've had a couple experiences with the CD. I had a real good friend named James, and James would go through the CD, but he'd get stuck at the doorway because he always picked, when he went through the doorway, he went up on this hill and he was like, he would put his one foot up on a rock like the great white hunter. And that's the furthest he would go. So he had gone through like 6 or 7 CD things and he would always get stuck. And then finally, we had a group and he finally went through the doorway. And when he was talking about going through the doorway, everybody in that group that knew him, finally they go. But he had a very interesting vision from them, and he finally broke through. And I was up in Scotland, and we were sitting there, had a group, and we went through the CD, and all of a sudden, this one person within the group started to cry. And everybody looked at him. I said, "You okay? Are you okay?" I said, "He's okay." And they looked at me and said, "Why?" I said, "Tell him why you're okay." He said, "I finally broke through. I understand everything about myself now." And they looked at me and said, "How'd you know?" I said, "When it hit, a light from above came into his body. And he understood for the first time who he was, what he had to do, and his understanding of life." And that's why he was crying, because he was so happy because he finally broke through. So I had quite a few experiences with people like this, but the one thing I have to always warn about, don't try to interpret your dream. You have to basically see a picture. And when you see that picture, it explains what that CD part is trying to tell you. But a lot of times we allow the brain to come in and the brain will misinterpret so that the brain does not lose that power. So I have to tell people you have to be almost given tools so that you can understand to stop thinking when you do things. That you have to basically let the picture, the first thought that comes into your mind in a picture, go with it. But we always say, "No, it can't be that. It must be this," because we want something out of something that is not ours. So we invent things. But that was one of the conversations that we had with the energies. And the other one was, they said that the mind is so powerful and people have to understand simple things about the mind. They said and the way they explained it, I guess, was probably the best way. And like I said, people can take this any way they want, interpret it any way they want. But they said a woman gets impregnated by a sperm. The sperm turns into an egg, maybe one or two. Could be twins, could be more than twins. But they said when they develop as an egg and they become a fetus, they have a connection with the woman through the cord. So whatever the woman thinks, it's passed on to the fetus. It's just like I was explaining last time, but if a woman's there and said, "I wonder if it's a boy," I wonder if it's a girl. Or maybe it'll be a boy. Then it'll be a confusion. So when the baby comes out, the baby's confused. And when we sit there, it's like we eat certain foods. And I had that experience where my first 2 kids, when they came out, the mother ate regular American food and, of course, Asian food, which was kind of fatty. So now both my oldest kids have problems with their weight. When Matthew was conceived, his father, who was a pharmacist, took over and told the mother exactly what she needed to eat and what she needed to do. He comes out, he has no problem with weight. In fact, he might be a little bit underweight.
My grandfather is
And he can eat, he can eat, he can eat, and he can eat, and he won't put no weight on. That's just a simple type of diet. But again, women have to understand that if they get angry, that's passed on to the fetus. So sometimes if they're always angry, you get an angry child. You get a child that basically is always getting into trouble. So it's very important for women to understand that when they're impregnated and they're carrying a child, learn to, like I said, learn good thoughts. And if you have a negative thought, use humor right away. And if you can use humor, that's passed on to the fetus. So when the child is born, it's a happy child.
Not just that, when they get to a certain point in the fetus stage, they also can develop hearing as well, so they can actually hear outside the womb. And depending what they pick up outside the womb also affects the baby too. So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, but it's all from neuroscience, the development of the brain in the baby. Oh, I'll just let you get on with it. My head's fuzzy today.
But it's something that women have to really think about. The whole idea is how important it is to have good thoughts when they're pregnant. Because that it's attached, the baby's attached to you. It knows, it picks up things from you.
Well, scientifically, I mean, if you're in an angry state all the time, you're going to be pumping more adrenaline and adrenaline. Oh God, I can't even speak today. Adrenaline and other hormones and chemicals through the body, so they're going to be going into the baby, aren't they?
Yeah, and it's realistically, when you sit there and you think about if they're a drug addict, the baby's already a drug addict when it comes out.
Well, I don't know how that accounts for me then, because my mum's not funny, and I'm usually the class clown, and she never took drugs. She doesn't drink, and then there's me.
When you came out, I said, "I'll drink to that."
Maybe they swapped the babies and they picked the wrong one up.
Yeah, it's just like I know when there was 9 of us.
What?
My oldest brother.
9?
There was 9 kids. The oldest brother, Michael, passed when he was about a year old. And then my father had 5 girls, then a boy, and then another girl. Well, at that particular time, my mom was told that she couldn't have any more kids and that her womb was damaged. Lo and behold, I came along. And sometimes I wondered, I asked, was I supposed to come? Was I supposed to do what I'm doing now? Even though when I was young, I had certain connections. It's just like when my mom sat there one day, and I was like about 6 years old. And I was sitting there and I said, I'm going to make it rain. So I started doing a chant and I started dancing. The next thing I knew, I heard thunder. There was a lightning class and I looked up. And my mother came out and said, "You're doing something evil." And I kind of got off my pathway. And it took me a long time again to find my pathway. And my mom, before she passed, she apologized. She said, I should have understood your father, because your father was very connected, and I should have understood how you were connected. But I was afraid that you would go over and leave the Catholic Church. Well, I left the Catholic Church anyway, even though I was an altar boy. And I was raised basically in a Catholic school. But it made me, this is I started in 5th grade, and I went all the way through to the 7th grade at a Catholic school. And then when I was in the 8th grade, my dad pulled me out because he got really upset with the nuns and with the priest, the head priest. So he pulled me out of school and put me in a government school. But I continued to be an altar boy until I graduated from high school.
So how
But
old was that then?
I graduated from high school at 17. I just turned 7. Well, I actually 16, but I turned 17 once I was out. So I was kind of young when I got out. I was only 16 years old when I graduated out of college. Not out of college, but in high school.
So did you have a bad I mean, a man of your age, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but were the nuns like beating you and things then? Because was it a harsh time under the Catholics?
Well, I always knew I had something. And I started changing when I was in high school because the questions I would ask had nothing to do with Christianity.
You've mentioned that before, and you've avoided my question there. That I'm not going to try and psychoanalyze you because, like, I'm not going to get in your head. But you avoided my question. Was
Well,
it's a
I probably
harsh time being raised?
yeah, because my ears are a little bit plugged, so
Oh,
sometimes
was,
I can't quite hear you.
sorry. What I was saying is, not all Catholics, obviously, but there are a lot of horror stories of the Catholic Church.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, like nuns beating kids, obviously priests abusing children and altar boys. And I'm not, I don't want to delve into that or anything, but I'm saying, was it a hard Catholic upbringing that you went through?
In some cases, no. In some cases, yes. It all depends on what nun was teaching. I mean, there were some that were very, very abusive, and we had the head priest, Father Hildebrand, loved to beat kids. And it was funny because when I was told to go to his office, I knew I was going to get a beating because he'd have to sit there and bend over, and then he used the back of a desk, a student desk, and he hit there and hit your behind. So I was told to go to his office, and it was because of a fight. I didn't fight. The guy basically punched me, but they believed him and said I started it, which I didn't. So before I went over to the priest, I told the nun, I said, "Can I go to the bathroom first?" She said, "Sure." So I went to the bathroom and I got a roll of toilet paper and pulled it, and made a padding, and I put it inside my pants. So when I went to see Father Hildebrand, he took his stick out and started, ow, ow. I didn't feel a thing, but I had to play the part, So, but that's one of the reasons I think my dad pulled me out too, because he didn't agree with the abuse that they were utilizing at the school.
Well, I mean, I was in the first year of senior school, which is different to like you and your grades and stuff, but I would have been 11 or 12 when the cane became banned. So up until I was age 12, you could get caned at school.
Wow.
I mean, when I was in junior school, there was a teacher who used to use a ruler on your knuckles and they'd use the edge. So it was acceptable, wasn't it, when you were growing up to beat children, which you wouldn't get away with now.
Well, it's kind of funny too. They had like an award system. If you went to church, you had to go to church every damn morning before school. And if you went to communion, you got chocolate milk and a special sandwich. And if you didn't go to communion, you had white milk and a peanut sandwich. So again, psychologically, they try to control things. And in some ways, that kind of turned me off because they said, everybody should be treated the same. That if you had chocolate milk, everybody should get chocolate milk. Everybody should get sandwiches. But again, they forced you to do certain things if you wanted an award.
Well, you were lucky you got milk because I was at school when Margaret Thatcher took the milk off children.
Well, they're finding out now. Milk basically, yeah, milk isn't that healthy for you, I guess now. They said, they say if you watch the animals at a certain age, they're cut off the milk. They said only the humans continue milk until they pass.
Well, that's why there's lactose intolerance, isn't there, in some people? But I know, I can't remember which book it was I was reading recently, but Europeans have a better tolerance to it than, say, people from India.
Well, I respected milk, believe it or not, because I'm the one that used to sit underneath the cow and milk them.
Did you?
And I said, to get a bucket of work, you had to do a hell of a lot of work to get a bucket full. So I kind of respected that. I was so glad to see all of a sudden they came out with a new type of system where, again, you had the electric milkers. All you did was attach them to the pits and then milk them. You didn't have to do anything. So a lot of progress was made since I was young and got up into high school.
Okay, I have a question for you. It's not from me. When I first felt... I'm reading it out here, by the way. When I first felt connected around 15 years ago, I felt a strong presence of the elders, but my connection seems to have got weaker in recent years. Can you shed any light on it?
Well, you got to remember the first step again is the elders. And the elders are there to answer questions so that you can find your connection. They'll show you things that you should be doing. It's like the Mother Earth Lodge. I was taken to the elders, the ancient ones, and that's when they asked me about the Sweat Lodge. And they asked me, did you suffer in your mother's womb? I said, no. And I finally realized at Sweat Lodge, you suffer. So that's when the ancient grandmothers and ancient grandfathers said, would you like us to teach you how to do a mother's womb, Mother Earth Lodge? And I said, I'd be honored. So again, they showed me how to build the womb of Mother Earth. That's why it was so much different than the Sweat Lodge. That's why it's more, I don't want to say sacred, but I want to say that it's more spiritual. So things happen. So the whole idea is if you expect the elders to take over, the connections get weak and weaker because you're not supposed to be depending on the elders. They're only there to get you to the higher level. And the higher level is actually nature. The animals, the trees, the grass, they become your teachers. The wolf is always great when you have the vision of the wolf because the wolf will start you off on your pathway. But you have to elevate. A lot of people get stuck on that first because they say, oh, that's my spirit guide. Yeah, it's a spirit guide, but you can't control it and you can't own it. So a lot of people get caught in that level and they won't advance because they hold on to that wolf. So once the wolf shows them something, they need to elevate to the next one and then the next one until they finally find out their connection to the source of the power, which is within the sacred hoop. So the thing is, go out and tell her, whoever's asking a question, go out, do a circle with 2 rocks. And what you do is, again, find that position. If the rocks come together on the second round, same place, that's where you need to offer tobacco. And the other thing is, when the elders came, how many times did they say thank you by offering tobacco or offering something to eat? Because they can suck the flavor out, They can't eat it, like say for instance a jelly donut, but they can suck the flavor out. But how many times did she or he say thank you and offer something to the elders for helping them? Because if you don't give, you're not going to basically get anything. So she probably didn't, or he probably didn't reward for the information, so they stopped coming.
Well, I hope that answers your question. You weren't showing enough gratitude to the elders, by the sounds of it. I've got a quick question for you because you said you were given the know-how or whatever to do a Mother Earth Lodge. For those listening or watching, and for me as well, what's the difference then between an ordinary sweat lodge and the Mother Earth Lodge? You know, the purpose of them.
Well, the sweat lodge was given because the men cried for one. They went into vision, and they actually was out of jealousy, I believe. I may be totally wrong, but I always felt there's a jealousy because the women had a natural cleansing system. It was called their time of the month, period. Well, they wanted to cleanse their body. Well, they couldn't have a period, so they cried for a vision. But the mistake they made was that they mentioned the fact to suffer. So when you go into a sweat lodge, it's hot. And sometimes when I went for my first sweat lodge, I sat and said, how in the hell are you supposed to have good thoughts when you're being cooked? I said, and then when you're supposed to pray, how can you pray when it's so hot? All you want to do is get the hell out of there. So the sweat lodge basically is for men only. And I know that sometimes when you watch TV, television, movies, it's not the same because they're given a false impression of what the sweat lodge is because they show women in a sweat lodge, which is a no-no. And all of a sudden, the woman has a vision. That's not what the sweat lodge was all about. The sweat lodge was just to purify yourself. Now, the Mother Earth Lodge is basically, again, it's the womb of Mother Earth. So everything inside that womb is knowledge. And it depends on what you ask for. And I've been shown in the visions that don't wait until you get in there to ask. Do a ceremony before you go in. Offer tobacco to the fire, to the rocks, to the earth, to the water, to the air, and then ask your question. And then put your tobacco into the fire. Now you're already set. And all the energies, life force energies, know what you're going to be asking, so they prepare themselves. So once you go into the Mother Earth Lodge, into the womb, they're waiting for you. So when you ask again during the talk round, they're already there. And if you're sincere, they will help you.
Okay, so you said that it was hot going into a sweat lodge. Is a sweat lodge hotter then than the Mother Earth Lodge?
Oh, only maybe by about 60, 70 degrees. You got to remember, yeah, in a Mother Earth Lodge, you bring in the 7 rocks because you open up the doorway. And you honor the spirits, the life force energies, the energies, Mother Earth, universal energies, and then finally the creator that opens up the doorway. So it's not hot, it's comfortable. The second round, you only bring in four rocks. So it doesn't get, and usually in a sweat lodge, you can do anywhere from 28 rocks to 49 rocks. And you only do there's some of them that you only do 2 doorways. So, and then the hot round is the third round because that's the healing round. That's the round where you get purified from the inside out. The pores open, but everything is pushed outwards. All the pollution in your body is pushed outwards. So when people say it's getting hot, I say concentrate on the heat being a healer. Let the heat come in, understanding that the healer. So I tried to basically get them into a certain spiritual atmosphere that they understand that the heat itself is now a healing. It's different than a sweat lodge. It's a healing realm. So I sing a healing song and it cleanses your body. And then the last round again, 4 rocks. So it's cooled down quite a bit.
What about the Thunderbird Lodge then? Is that comparable to a sweat lodge, or is that still cooler than a sweat lodge?
It's a lot cooler than a sweat lodge.
Wow, because the
Because
Thunderbird
again,
was hot enough.
you don't suffer in mother's womb. And that's the whole concept. The only thing they ask you to do is that during the healing round, that you understand that the healing round has to come and has to be warm enough to clean the pores out.
And what is the purpose of the Thunderbird Lodge then?
A Thunderbird Lodge is for addicts. Because Mother Earth Lodge will not cleanse the drugs out of your system. Because it has to really get hot, so that it's forced out. But like I said before, I've had 5 or 6 addicts that have come into the Thunderbird Lodge. And after the first lodge, they said they quit. Whereas they said when they went on to programs that helped them to quit, 2-3 weeks later, they're back on the drugs again. Because in the Thunderbird Lodge, it takes all that stuff out of your system. And there's a certain tea that you can drink too, that is basically, again, you have the sage, and sometimes I'll make certain drinks. The sage gathers whatever inside of you to itself. It's a poultice. But then you have to have a flusher. Well, the flusher basically is peppermint tea. It flushes the system out. And it all depends, like what type of, if you have a virus, there's also a herb that can be utilized to help kill the virus, take it out of your system. It's good for covert too.
What's that then? What herb?
I can't tell people because it's a sacred herb.
All right, okay, that's fair enough. How
Well,
could they get access then to that information?
There's some that they need to ask, and if they ask right, they can get the secret. The secret will come to them. They'll show them the herb.
And how do you ask correctly then?
I just basically ask tobacco and say, "Am I? How would you say it? Not honored, but I said, do I have the capability of utilizing this medicine for myself and for people?" And then if it's meant to be, you'll be taken to a place and they'll show you the herb and how to prepare it.
I'm going to come off the earphones for a second because I can hear my cat meowing at the door for 5 minutes now, and he's very loud, so he's probably waking the neighbours up. So you just carry on, sir.
Okay. What I'm going to say basically is that a lot of people will sit there and they will depend on me. They will depend on me helping them. But people have to understand that there's a limit to my help. Once they reach a certain level, they have to be placed on their own. And sometimes they see it as something negative, but they will never be able to stand on their own 2 feet if they don't learn that they have the power to deal with things and they don't need me anymore. They have to understand that I'll take them to a certain level where they are connected, and therefore by being connected, they don't need me anymore. And I need to basically start helping someone else to elevate. So they can't sit there and piggyback on me all the time. So at a certain time, I will pull back, and sometimes they will get a little angry at me because I'm pulling back. But they have to understand that that's the only way they're going to learn to stand on their own 2 feet, to understand they have the power to deal with things. And they don't need me telling them they can go to the source.
Well, I've got something to look forward to listening to in the edit now, because you've just said something and I missed it. Thank you for the question, and we will be live again next week. I'm going to end the recording now.
Next week I'll come in as the first Indian streaker.
Go
Running
on.
bear. Running bear.
Oh. I'll end the recording there, I think, with your dad joke. Thanks for listening to Straight Talk Sacred Pathway. If you'd like to ask Wa-Na-Nee-Che a question, you can email me at stuart@realityresponsibility.com. The link will be in the description. And don't forget, you can download a powerful guided meditation for free at humancircleoflife.com.